Alright, let's get one thing straight before we even start. This video is not going to open with the Battle of Cannae was a pivotal military confrontation in 216 BC in southern Italy, because you could pull that sentence off any history textbook and honestly, you checked out the moment I started reading it. I know it, you know it, we all know it. Instead, let me tell you this. Hannibal Barca pulled off one of the greatest, bro how did he even do that, moments ever recorded in human history, and today we are breaking that moment down, every absurd detail, every stroke of genius, every, wait, this actually happened, beat, until you fully understand why military academies are still teaching this battle over 2,000 years later. Get comfortable, because ready or not, we're already moving. History has never waited for anyone. Let's set the scene. You are Rome. 3rd century BC. You are the most dominant military force in the Mediterranean. Your legions are basically the template for every organized army that comes after you. Your discipline is legendary. Your tactical formations have been perfected over generations, and every enemy you've ever faced has either been crushed or absorbed into your growing empire. In gaming terms, you are the player who joined the server with a fully maxed out loadout, best sword enchantments, best armor, full durability, and not a single opponent has managed to land a hit on you. You are untouchable. Or at least that's what you think. Now, a new character enters the stage, Hannibal Barca. Carthaginian. Son of Hamilcar Barca, which already tells you everything you need to know because that family took warfare personally. And here's the detail that sets the tone for this entire story. When Hannibal was a child, he begged his father to take him along on a military campaign. His father agreed, but only on one condition: Hannibal had to swear an oath. Not a normal, "I'll be good" oath. A sworn, lifelong vow to dedicate his entire existence to Rome's destruction. The kid swore it before he hit puberty. He literally chose his life's mission before he could even shave, and that mission was to destroy Rome. When you understand that, everything Hannibal does afterward makes perfect, terrifying sense. So fast forward to adulthood. Hannibal is now commanding Carthaginian forces in Spain, building up power, and he decides, and I need you to really absorb this decision, he decides to march from Spain, through the south of France, over the Alps, and into Italy. In winter. With war elephants. Yes. Elephants. He brought elephants to cross the Alps. The Roman intelligence services reportedly received this information and almost certainly dismissed it as misinformation because, to be fair, who in their right mind would attempt something that insane? But he did it. He crossed the Alps. He lost most of his elephants to the cold and the treacherous mountain terrain. He lost a significant portion of his soldiers to altitude, frostbite, and ambushes by local mountain tribes. He permanently lost vision in one eye after developing a severe infection while wading through a marshland on the Italian side of the crossing. And he still made it into Italy. At this point, what Hannibal's crossing of the Alps tells us about his character is simple. When this man commits to an objective, that objective gets done. Period. No bargaining with circumstances, no, maybe we should rethink this, just pure, unwavering commitment to the objective. Now you're in Italy. You're surrounded by enemy territory. Behind you are the Alps. In front of you is the most powerful military force the ancient world has ever seen. And you're still standing. Why? Because you have a plan. And Hannibal's plan was not simply march to Rome and burn it down. This would be too straightforward, and Hannibal does not do straightforward. His actual plan was more like a chess strategy played 5 moves ahead: enter Italy, peel away Rome's allies by demonstrating Roman vulnerability, isolate Rome politically and economically, and force them to negotiate on Carthage's terms. This is less, send everyone in and overwhelm the final boss, and more, methodically dismantle every source of power before you go near the main target. You don't attack the source of power directly, you systematically dismantle everything that sustains it. And in the early years, the plan is absolutely working. At the Battle of the Trebia River, he ambushes and devastates a Roman army. At Lake Trasimene, in what is possibly the greatest ambush in military history, he hides his entire army in the fog and forests along the lakeshore, and when a Roman army marches past in the morning mist completely unaware, he springs the trap. Roughly 30,000 Roman soldiers are wiped out in the span of a single morning. Rome is in full panic mode. At this point, Rome makes a smart decision. They appoint a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus, who looks at the situation and says, "Do not engage Hannibal directly. Harass him, cut off his supply lines, deny him the decisive battle he wants, and let time and attrition do the work." This strategy is so effective it now carries his name, the Fabian strategy, and it's basically the "don't fight the boss until you've ground enough XP" approach to warfare. Theoretically perfect. But here's the problem: Rome's culture does not respect this approach. The Roman public starts calling Fabius, Cunctator, the delayer, as an insult. Romans love open battle. Roman soldiers joined up to fight, and having this old man tell them to run away from a Carthaginian felt humiliating. Political pressure builds. Fabius's mandate expires. The incoming Roman leadership makes a bold, overconfident decision: assemble the largest fighting force Rome has ever put on a battlefield and finish Hannibal once and for all. The result is a consular army of approximately 86,000 men, one of the largest forces Rome has ever fielded, marching south to confront Hannibal at a place called Cannae in the summer of 216 BC. Hannibal has roughly 50,000. On paper, the outcome looks inevitable. Rome simply cannot lose with those numbers. Except they absolutely do. And this is where the genius happens. Let's break down the Battle of Cannae because it is so elegantly designed that it genuinely looks like someone spent 200 hours in a strategy game perfecting this specific scenario before executing it in real life. Rome deploys in their standard formation, heavy infantry packed into the center, cavalry on the flanks. Hannibal looks at this and sets his formation like so. He puts his weakest, most unreliable troops, his Spanish and Gallic mercenaries, directly in the center, bulging forward slightly toward the Romans. On the flanks, he places his best cavalry and his elite African infantry. Rome sees the enemy center bulging toward them and thinks, perfect, we hit that center hard, push through, and we win. So they advance. And Hannibal's center starts to give way. It bends backward under Roman pressure. The Romans push harder. The center retreats more. But, and this is the critical detail, it does not break. It's like a shock absorber, not a wall. Every time the Romans push, it gives ground, absorbs the blow, and pulls them deeper. It is the oldest trick in the book: show the enemy an opening that looks too good to pass up, watch them pour everything into it, and then close the trap, and Rome walks straight in without hesitation. As Rome masses more and more soldiers into the center chasing this retreating Carthaginian line, something predictable but catastrophic happens to the Roman formation: it compresses. 86,000 men, funneling into a tightening space, pushing forward, packing tighter and tighter until soldiers at the back are pressing against soldiers in front of them, until men in the middle literally cannot lift their arms to swing their weapons. And at exactly this moment, when Rome is maximally committed, maximally compressed, maximally unable to react, Hannibal's flanks close. His faster, harder-hitting cavalry tears through the Roman horsemen on both wings, and then, instead of chasing the fleeing Roman horsemen like cavalry typically did in ancient battles, they loop around and hit Rome from the rear. Simultaneously, the African infantry on the wings pivot inward, rolling up both sides of the Roman mass. The center, which was never actually breaking, straightens out and holds firm. The result, 86,000 Roman soldiers, encircled on all sides, packed so tightly they can barely breathe, with nowhere to run and no room to fight. It becomes, in the brutal accounting of ancient warfare, a slaughter. Conservative estimates place Roman casualties at Cannae somewhere between 47,000 and 70,000 dead, in a single afternoon of fighting. To give you a sense of scale, that death toll, in one day, rivals the worst single-day losses of World War I. One afternoon. One battle. One man's plan. This maneuver, the double envelopment, the surrounding of a larger force using coordinated flank attacks, is called the Cannae model, and here is the remarkable thing: it is still taught at West Point, Sandhurst, and virtually every serious military academy on Earth today. 2,200 years later. Generals from Napoleon to Rommel to Schwarzkopf have studied, referenced, and attempted to replicate what Hannibal did at Cannae. When military scholars want to describe the perfect tactical encirclement, they literally call it a Cannae. That is the equivalent of a strategy invented during a game's first week of release still being the meta pick 2 decades later, not just viable, but the definitive benchmark every serious player studies. That is the level of what happened here. Now let me address a misconception that has been floating around for centuries, because this channel does not traffic in lazy history. There is a famous line, often attributed to Hannibal's cavalry commander Hannibal, that goes something like, "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use one." The implication being that after Cannae, Hannibal should have immediately marched on Rome itself, and his failure to do so was the strategic blunder that cost Carthage the war. That version of events is satisfying, it fits neatly into a rise and fall arc, it works great as a documentary soundbite, but it is reductive and does Hannibal's actual strategic thinking a serious disservice. Here is the reality: Hannibal had no siege equipment. Rome's walls were formidable even by ancient standards, and besieging a city of Rome's size without proper equipment and without naval support was not a realistic option. More importantly, Hannibal's goal was never to conquer Rome militarily, it was to make Rome's allies abandon her, which would force Rome to sue for peace on Carthaginian terms. And immediately after Cannae, this strategy was actually working. Several key Italian cities, including the strategically vital Capua, switched sides and pledged support to Hannibal. The plan was producing results. The part of the story that doesn't get enough credit is what Rome did next, because it might be the most impressive moment in Roman history. Hannibal's ambassadors arrived in Rome to discuss terms. The Senate refused to receive them. Not, "We'll talk later," not, "We need time to consider," flat refused. They formally legislated against any peace negotiations as long as a single Carthaginian soldier stood on Italian ground. They drafted teenagers, freed slaves, equipped the poorest citizens, and built new armies. They sent their best general, a young man named Publius Cornelius Scipio, to Spain to dismantle Carthage's power base there, cutting off Hannibal's reinforcements and supply lines at the source. Rome, after losing possibly 100,000 men in 3 years to this one general, did not break. They adapted. And this is where Hannibal's plan hits its structural limit. He could defeat Roman armies, he could humiliate Roman commanders, but he could not break the Roman will to keep fighting. You can exploit a player's overconfidence, but if after every defeat they just re-queue with a better strategy, eventually the meta shifts against you. Scipio, who later earns the honorific Africanus, is the other genius of this story, and the reason he matters is beautifully poetic. He studied Hannibal. He analyzed exactly what happened at Cannae, at Trebia, at Trasimene, and he understood the principles underneath the tactics. When Rome eventually took the war to North Africa, Scipio deployed against Hannibal at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC using the very framework Hannibal had made famous: flanking maneuvers, coordinated cavalry, attacking the enemy's tactical assumptions. Hannibal walked into the trap. Not because he was suddenly stupid, but because Scipio had become, in terms of strategic thinking, his equal. The apprentice had fully surpassed the master. Hannibal suffered his first and only battlefield defeat at Zama. Carthage sued for peace. The Second Punic War was over. But here is where Hannibal's story becomes something beyond a military case study. It becomes genuinely tragic in a way that no textbook captures. After the defeat, Hannibal didn't disappear. He entered Carthaginian politics, ran for office, implemented anti-corruption reforms, modernized the city's finances, and by most accounts was actually competent at peacetime governance. Rome, however, never forgave him. They pressured Carthage to hand him over, viewing him as a permanent threat. Hannibal fled. He spent his remaining years as a man without a country, moving through Syria, Armenia, and Bithynia, offering his expertise to various rulers, offering his strategic expertise to whoever would oppose Rome, still fighting the same enemy at 60 that he had sworn to fight at age 9. Finally, when the Romans tracked him down in Bithynia and demanded his extradition, Hannibal took poison rather than be captured. His reported last words translated roughly to, "Let us relieve the Romans of their anxiety, since they find it too long to wait for the death of an old man." He died on his own terms, the same way he had lived, refusing to surrender to Rome. If that's not the most cinematic ending to a real human life you've ever heard, I don't know what to tell you. So what do we actually take away from all of this? Because this channel isn't just about telling cool stories, it's about finding the ideas underneath the events. And Cannae has several. First, numerical superiority does not guarantee victory. Hannibal demonstrated this so definitively that 2,200 years later we still cite him when we make this point. Whether you're in a startup competing against a corporate giant, a basketball team facing a wealthier opponent, or a debate where the other side has more evidence, having more resources is an advantage, not a guarantee. How you use what you have matters infinitely more than how much you have. Second, your enemy's strength can become your weapon. Rome's aggression, their confidence in mass formations, their cultural obsession with frontal assault, Hannibal turned every single one of those traits against them. The way to beat someone isn't always to be stronger than their strengths, sometimes it's to identify what their strength makes them blind to. Third, true strategy operates on a longer time horizon than tactics. Hannibal crossing the Alps, weakening his center intentionally, feigning retreat, none of these are reactive decisions. They are moves in a plan several steps ahead of the current moment. The ability to hold a complex, multi-step objective in your head while the immediate situation is chaotic and dangerous is one of the rarest and most valuable cognitive skills a human being can develop. And here is my fourth wall moment, because this channel has always been honest with you. I could have just given you dates and maps and a Wikipedia-style rundown of Cannae. You would have learned the same facts. But you probably wouldn't still be watching right now. You definitely wouldn't be this invested in a Carthaginian general's final years in exile, and you almost certainly wouldn't be thinking about how this applies to your life. That is the whole point of this channel. History is not a list of events. It is a record of human decision-making, the brilliant ones, the catastrophic ones, the ones driven by ego and the ones driven by vision. And every single one of those decisions was made by someone who woke up that morning not knowing how their story would end. Hannibal didn't have the ending spoiled. Neither did Rome. Neither did Scipio. What set the figures history remembers apart from the ones it buried is that they acted with conviction, precision, and in Hannibal's case, a level of creative thinking that literally changed the vocabulary of warfare forever. If you found value in this video, subscribe, because we have a lot more of this coming, and the algorithm gods require sacrifice in the form of your engagement. Leave a comment below with a historical moment that made you say, "There is absolutely no way that's real." See you in the next one.